What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. This is episode 8. 8. I hope you are just as excited as we are.
I'm running out of fingers.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're gonna have to hold up.
We did say 10.
I think we're gonna stop at 10.
Anyway, good morning, good people. Little throwback Thursday. If you guys saw my post today, that's an ode to K Carp. We call him. He's Keon Carpenter out of Virginia Tech. Passed away a couple years ago, but if you guys know, he was a safety for Virginia Tech. Every morning, the dude was just inspiring people, so I just want to throw that out to people. He's still on all of our minds, and just want to keep him out there. But one thing he always did that I was looking forward to on Facebook was his good morning, good people, always keeping those vibes going. So, all right, man. Well, listen, this is episode 8. We're getting into it. This is Damon.
This is Mike,
and this is a damn good show.
Damn good too.
All right, let's get into it. Any recaps from last week?
Well,
you were on Instagram a lot this week.
I was on Instagram a bit this week, my personal account, and I've been tormenting and making fun of my family and friends up north because they're dealing with some cold up there. There's some cold.
It's cold here too, right?
It was cold yesterday. I should have done a video yesterday. It was in the low 40s. You could see your breath, and that's not normal here in Florida.
No, what time do you go out running?
I'm usually out there around 8:30.
Okay, so it was chilly. It was in the 40s this morning too, but like it warmed up pretty quickly. So
yeah. So yeah, you guys need to move down to Florida because I'm not moving up there. Can't deal with the cold. And
I like the videos though. I mean, then you have like 2 beanies on and like multiple shirts.
Yeah, I had on 2 beanies, 2 sets of gloves. I had on 2 t-shirts.
Oh yeah, you did have 2 sets. Who wears 2
sweatshirts.
sets of gloves unless you're going skiing?
Well, I don't do well in the cold here, so I have to take extra precaution.
Yeah, sure. I
extra
understand.
precaution when I'm out.
Well, you have low body fat percentage. You can't hold in all that heat, right?
Well, it takes a lot to be this fit.
You're not like me. You gotta add that too. Well, anyway, so yeah, my week was actually pretty eventful. I know the first couple weeks we mentioned Rye Hurley, RHH strong.
Yeah.
We told you about a case where she had Ewing sarcoma. She's last 8 months. She went under some treatment. Came out clean in January, and then she just did a recent checkup last week, which came back clean as well. So. Awesome. As a result of that, her family asked us to participate in what is going on here in Orlando for Arnold Palmer's Invitational during the week. If you guys are familiar with Arnold Palmer, he does a golf tournament here for the PGA here in Orlando that we always try to go and watch, of course, to play the games, but to watch golf. But what we did during the week was Arnie's March. So they do that to raise awareness and money. To raise money for the Arnold Palmer Hospital, the Children's Hospital, which is where she was treated, and many others are here. So they get all the patients, they get family, they get the staff that works there at the hospital, and they do a little march around. They provide them some food and some opportunity to talk and things like that. So the patients get to meet a few cool people. They had an Orlando City player there. They had an Orlando Pride player there. She was there. And, of course, a couple of PGA players. They came by and signed a bunch of stuff for them. And so it was really cool. So, anyway, I just want to give a shout out. This is what we got from it. But Arnie's March, if you haven't seen it, if you're not familiar with it, go check it out. If you can support in some way, even St. Jude's or Arnold Palmer or anything where they have a children's hospital and they're fighting cancer, those kids are actually just inspirational. They're fighters, and big shout out to Ryan Hurley and her family. You guys endured a lot. You deserve it, and I'm glad we were able to support you. So
yeah,
that was
definitely.
pretty. That was our thing we did this week.
Well, very cool.
Yeah,
and
man.
That's definitely a worthwhile charity to support. So, whether you can do something monetarily or just volunteer your time. But if neither one of those things work, go out, get yourself an Arnold Palmer. It's one of my favorite drinks.
True story.
Lemonade and tea. Definitely check it out.
Well, where's your favorite one to make?
Well, mine at home. I make a good Arnold Palmer.
We do make them at home. But if you're out in the public and you just want to get an Arnold Palmer, go to Chick-fil-A, man.
Really? Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. All right.
Because they make lemonade from scratch. They actually squeeze the lemons, sugar, and water. That's all it is. And then of course their tea's brewed as well. But I go for the sweet tea and regular lemonade because I like it a little bit sweeter.
Well, I do like Chick-fil-A's lemonade. I'll definitely have to check it out. But I typically do my Arnold Palmers with unsweet tea.
Unsweet tea. Yeah, those are good too.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you make a good strong tea, I guess it works out.
Yeah, you got to have a flavorful tea. So.
All right, cool. Well, that's our recap for the week. Mike was clowning on Instagram. I was trying to support our friends here, and that's kind of what we did for the week. So until next week, we'll give you a recap then too. So let's get into today's show.
So today's show, I think we want to talk about relationships, friends and families, and how you navigate those typical things when they fall apart. And
they look like they're falling apart.
They look like they're falling apart. And I mean, I think a lot of you out there can kind of relate. Let's say within the last 2 years, there has been a divide, both politically, both religiously, with friends, with families. And, you know, I want to talk about how you can navigate those relationships. Because, again, a lot of people have divided, but should we have? And how we can be better together.
Well, the question really is, right, it's one, how do you handle it as a person? How do you, as an individual? What are some of the things that you've experienced in that front? And maybe you've, and I'll admit, you know, you go through the cycle of being angry at people and not being angry, and who do you want to hang out with? Who do you not want to hang out with? The unfortunate side is there is a lot of divide that's been going on, and we just kind of want to address it from how have we learned from it? How have we handled it? And I think there's some instances in the last several years, not just the last 2, but even the last 5 to 10 years, just growing as individuals, how we've seen some things and how we handle it. So with that said, you know, maybe there's some instances that you've run into that we can at least shed some light on how we handled it. Maybe you could take some of that forward, you know. So
yeah, I don't think we're going to get into, you know, who's right or who's wrong, or which side is right or wrong, but I think it's very important that we address, for instance, I got a family reunion coming up this year.
Okay.
Yeah, and we all know family reunions are exciting and fun.
Fun in air quotes.
And it will be. It will be, because you have an opportunity to meet family members or see family members you haven't seen in years.
Yeah.
You get to meet new family members, babies, you know, spouses that may have married.
Ones you didn't know you had.
Yeah, ones you didn't know you had, which is an exciting time. But we all know you have reunions, and there are individuals that decide, hey, I'm not going. And I'm not going because is such and such going to be there? And you're like, yeah, they're going to be there. It was like, well, you know, we had a falling out, so we're not going to be there.
Okay.
And a lot of times family members, even friends, they have these falling outs because, as we mentioned before, they have different political views. They have different religious views
or something else.
Whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that's really unfortunate that, you know, relationships nowadays are falling apart because of those things.
Yeah.
And I think they're falling apart because no one wants to take the time to understand somebody else's perspective, another person's point of view.
Yeah, I think that's really true, right? I mean, we had a similar situation in our family. Recently had a family member. She came out as gay a couple years ago, and she had a wedding. The wedding was awesome, fantastic, up in the mountains in Virginia. But I can imagine, and I haven't talked to her about it, and I really don't think I need to. But I can imagine they probably went through some, you know, things where people were kind of, I kind of want to come and I kind of don't want to come. And I'm using that as an example just because it hit our family. And I don't suspect there was any real issues. But, you know, I can imagine in that situation, you know, people feel strongly, you know, even if you're a staunch religious person that doesn't believe in gay marriages, then you may not want to attend because of that. So that's one. But at the same time, are you going to continue being friends with that person? Or are you going to continue having a relationship with that person? So I hope in our situation that's not the case, but I can imagine there probably are some like that, because most of us were pretty open-minded, but that's a whole different, you know, conversation, right?
Well, I think a lot of that, you know, kind of stems from fear. You have individuals that have this fear because they have a type of ignorance, a lack of understanding certain counterparts.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I look back at it, you go back to the 80s when AIDS was rampant.
Yep.
You had individuals that were afraid to touch other people or be around other people because they, you know, thought they were going to get it for being in close proximity. So, you know, it's kind of that same kind of ignorance. I can't be around gay people because, you know, I might catch it.
Might catch it, yeah.
And you
or
know,
it's just something you don't agree with.
Yeah, and that's one aspect. Again, everyone is not like that. There are certain individuals that have stout religious reviews or views and standards, and that's no fault of your own. I have my personal views when it comes to that standpoint. If you're a religious or faith-driven individual, I believe that God, wherever you fall on that spectrum, is going to judge you based off of your stance.
Yeah.
They're not going to judge you based off of, dude, you were friends with that individual.
Right.
If that's your political, or not political view, but if that's your religious view,
yeah.
I don't think that it falls along those lines.
It may not.
But I think a lot of it stems with fear, because they have that fear of, well, how is that going to affect me? How does that impact me? And really, I don't think that it does.
No, I don't think it does. And a lot of questions that come up is like, well, how do you handle that, right? So what are we really trying to say here? We're really trying to get at having people have an open mind. Like, again, we're not going to dictate to you what you believe. That you're going to believe what you believe.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, can you be in the same room with a person that you don't believe in? Because as we've seen in previous episodes, we talked about social media.
Yeah.
People are keyboard ninjas, right? They're not only
you guys are wrong about everything.
But you have a hard stance, and you're going to believe that, and you're just digging your heels in the ground. But the cool part about it for you is that you're protected behind your computer. So people take that same kind of thought process even in person, right? Because now we've taken that individual away from us to talk to them, and now we're texting. But the problem with some of that is a lot of it's taken out of context. Someone will say something, and we're using the social media example. It could be even in person. Mike might have a conversation with someone, and I heard about it and I don't believe in it, but I'm going to sit there and staunchly just go against everything that Mike says, because I feel like that's not what I believe. But now I'm putting my beliefs on you, right? But I'm not to the point where I'm understanding Mike or his belief. I'm just telling you I don't like yours, and the problem is with a lot of that, it's taken out of context.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned the fear component. I think that's one element of it. But then the other element of it is that individuals, they are forcing or vomiting their views on another person. So just like you were just saying, if we get together and we have this disagreement, we're both knocking heads, because I'm like, well, why don't you believe this?
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, why don't you
believe mine?
and really, I think the approach should be for us to say, well, Damon, tell me about, your belief, why it's this, and him being open to it, and then vice versa. It should be the same thing. He's given me information on why he stands or believes a particular way, and I'm being receptive to it. I can give you an example. I have some friends that we're close to. So back in 2016, when the elections were going on, I had friends that were very close. We were very tight. Families were close. We did things together as friends, as families. And it was a shock to my system that these individuals had a different viewpoint than I did when it came to the election. And I was taken back. I was like, how dare they?
Right, because you get to that point too, right?
And so,
we've all done it. That's the thing.
And so I had to check myself. Because I said, this is not the type of person that I want to be. This is not the road that I want to go down, as far as being angry with somebody that I've been so close to because their views were different. So I went by their house and we actually had a conversation.
That's good.
We had a conversation about why they, believe what they believe, why they were going down that particular path, and then they were receptive to why I was going down my path.
Sure.
And then the surprising thing, we didn't come to a conclusion.
Right. Well, that's okay.
Which was fine. But what we did we walked away with a better understanding of each other.
Yeah.
And why we had these particular stands. And so it was eye-opening for me to begin taking that process with other people, whether they were family members or friends in life, to say, hey, I need to look at this situation from a standpoint of not putting my views on them, but being open and receptive. Now, I want to make one thing perfectly clear. There is a different avenue to this if those individuals are doing things that are harmful to you, that are harmful to other people. I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in a gang-ridden neighborhood. Yeah. And, there are individuals that were doing certain things that, hey, I thought was cool back in the day. Right. But then as I got older, as I matured, and I was attempting to elevate myself to graduate from high school.
You had different goals than them, right?
To get into college. Their actions and their things were harmful to what I was trying to do. They didn't align.
Right.
And so there are certain aspects in that particular case where, you got to sever those relationships and you got to move on. But again, there are relationships that you're going to have that their views are different, but they don't impact me.
Yeah.
They don't change me.
Yeah.
Their lifestyle may be different, but their lifestyle doesn't impact me. It doesn't change me. And I can be supportive to the extent that, hey, I may not agree with your lifestyle, but I agree with you because you're a good person. You're trying to do good things in the world, in the community, and with me. And so I can support those things.
Yeah, I think back to your original point, though, was like your relationship was built off of something you built over time, over history, right? Through spending time with a person that you genuinely feel that you understand that person and you know them. And that's what really your relationship as a friend should be based on, right?
Yeah.
You may have different opinions that you know as you grow, because everybody's going to grow differently. You're going to take in all your input from all the experiences that you have in life, and you may change your opinion over time, right? So I've got friends that I was really heavily involved with as far as hanging out, working out, going out bike riding. We worked together. We did all these things for several years. And then all of a sudden, like what happened a couple years ago with all the election happened, and all this sensationalism around, people's point of views, and they just wanted to make a big deal about everything, and they want to, like I said, sensationalize everything. Everything's got to be an outrage. Everything's got to be a big deal because it's not something I truly believe in. Yeah. And then, of course, it didn't help that, what's out in the news and stuff was always geared towards one particular thing that tugged on your heartstring, and then all of a sudden you start believing it. But
the news, the news is all about shock and awe. They want to shock you. They want to get you to watch.
They want you to keep you tuned in.
Yeah, they want to keep you tuned in. So they do those things to enrage you, to get you to buy into it. And so I don't want to go into a rampage on the media.
That legitimately is. But that's a good point. I mean, that's something that's a problem. I mean, that's what people don't realize that, and they don't see that for what it's worth. They only see what's coming at them. So, again, it made so the people I was friends with, all of a sudden I'm getting messages, man. I'm getting defriended on Facebook. I mean, it didn't happen a lot, but it was a couple. But at the time, man, it hit me hard, and I'm like, why? We were friends. Like, what the hell's going on? I still respect those people. To be honest with you, I don't disrespect them for what they did. I respect them for their point of view, but I don't understand it because we haven't had a chance to talk about it. Had we had a chance to talk about it, maybe we could be on some kind of level where we could still be friends, hang out, and do the things that we did before. But even though we have different views, and at the end of the day, maybe we will end up coming to some sort of compromise, at least on a couple of things, and that's okay. Well, you can be friends with people and not agree on everything. But that's
the question
nature, right?
The question that I want to open to you guys and also provide some of our perspective is how do you do those things? How do you begin to heal relationships that have fallen apart? And that's where a lot of people struggle. And when you have these relationships that have fallen apart because a lot of times you were knocking heads, and you have these situations where you've said some things, you've done some things, and then the other person did some things and said some things. And so when you think about the situation, you're thinking about what they said, what they did, and then you're forgetting or negating
the bigger picture,
what you did and what you said. Because there's two parts to every argument. You can't control the actions of another person, but you can control how you react and how you respond to a situation. So when you look at it, you have those relationships that have fallen apart, and they want to rekindle, but then they're like, you were wrong. You started it. You did this. You did that. But never once do they look back at themselves and approach that situation and say, you know what? How I responded to that situation was wrong. Yeah. And I think that's how it starts. And it may not be easy because the other person may not be open or willing to do it. But you can start out with at least a kind word to say, hey,
Get the conversation started.
Yeah, get the conversation started by acknowledging your actions. You got to, sometimes, a lot of us, I've had to do it. You got to look deep at yourself and what did you do wrong in a particular situation. And I got another comment on that too. As a friend, I mentioned this, I think, in video 1, our first episode. I had a friend, or we're still friends, on social media, that was making comments about, and she still does it today. She makes comments, she brings to light a variety of different things that are happening throughout the U.S. that are racially enacted, motivated. There are a number of different things that, racially have had negative impacts. And some of them, as I was viewing them, I think are on a small scale compared to, there are a number of different things, and anybody can relate to, the severity of different things. And so I commented on it because she posts so many of them. I was like, why is everybody getting mad about this? This is a minor thing when there's, so many big things out there. And she responded, and I think we had this really good dialogue where it boiled down to we agreed with each other.
Right, which is strange, right?
Which is strange. We agreed with each other, but we disagreed because I was attacking her, making her comment about this small thing. I'm like, why are you putting all your energy into this little thing when we can be putting our energy into these big things? And her response was, well, I want to bring awareness to all of it.
Well, everybody wants to be helpful, right?
Yeah. I mean, and so I took that as, but then you're just mad, then you're just always mad kind of thing.
Or you come off like that.
Yeah.
Because it can be a perception thing.
Yeah, and so that's what it was for me. But then after it was all done and we ended and it was kind of like, hey, we're going to agree to disagree, I realized after the fact that we 100% agreed with each other on the topic, that it was important to know. But my fault, I had to look at myself to say, hey, I agreed with her. I agreed with what she was talking about. I just didn't agree with her delivery or that particular topic. And that was unfair for me, unfair for her, for me to really just chime in the way that I did. And so I think that's where a lot of us fall short, is that I don't like the delivery message. I don't like the topic this time. So, I'm a comment. And I created something that didn't need to be created because I had a different perspective, although I agreed with it.
Well, so the reason why you had a different perspective, I think, in a lot of cases of people, is because you only see a small snippet of it. It's out of context. Context has so much to do with it, right? And then back, the question was, how do you handle that? And coming to grips with yourself and being like, all right, how can I improve the situation? And a lot of it is driven by fear, why people don't want to do that. Because it's not easy. Our kids come up to us all the time and they say, Dad, I really had a hard time trying to talk to this person, even though I don't agree with them. It was really hard to keep my mouth shut, for one. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's not easy. So that's the first thing you have to realize. If you get to the point where you want to make a change, or you want to try to alleviate a situation, or you want to maintain a friendship that you've had for years, and you don't want it to deteriorate over something, I don't want to call it stupid because you probably believe in it, but it's something that you guys disagree on, then it's going to be painful at first, because you're going to have to swallow your pride a little bit, and you're going to have to talk to the person. And the other person's going to have to want to talk to you. But, if you're feeling like, well, do I have to be that person that steps up? Maybe you do. So you're going to live with the consequences either way.
That's
either you do it or you don't, right?
That's always the funny part.
What's the worst part about making a decision? If people are like, well, I could do 1, 2, A, B, C, or D. Well, the weird part is, really, it's not weird. You're not going to know, because you're going to pick one and you're not going to know about the other 3. You know what I mean? Like, there are different avenues you could take. But which one are you going to take? You're going to take one where you want a resolution that's going to benefit you and the relationship that you have. What do you want out of it? If you want to sever ties with the person and be done with it, then that's a different decision, right? And then you don't tackle it, but maybe you're just sitting back and kind of watching it happen. But, that's your decision, and I think that's what people wrestle with.
Yeah.
That's tough to kind of deal with, like, what, the fork in the road. Which way do I take? But remember, the key is you're not gonna not going to know that unless you pick one of them. And the other thing is, when you do finally get to sit down with them, what do you talk about? Mm-hmm. Do you just hit them head on, like, no, dude, you know? But you probably can't, but because that's
just going to
perpetuating the problem, right?
Just
so it's all about asking the right questions. Like, so instead of being like, well, why don't you do this, or why don't you believe this, or what, when you ask someone why, mm-hmm. it touches a part of the brain that's emotional. Mm-hmm. And it's emotional. And the problem with your brain with emotions is you can't put those into words. So if you change your questioning around and you soften it a little bit and be like, all right, what is it about my belief that bothers you? And they can hem and haw around, make up something, or they give you some ambiguous response. Dig a little deeper. Now, not too hard, right? We were mentioning that before. Yes. You don't want to press them too hard, but if your intent is to try to get something out of it and get the conversation going, you'll find that if you keep asking, what is it about this situation that really you don't agree with, or what is it that's driving you crazy about me? Mm-hmm. You can keep asking and asking and asking, and eventually you're going to see that people will start talking.
Yeah. And sometimes it may not be that day. Sometimes you gotta take some time. Give an individual an opportunity to come around, because you may be ready for healing, but that other person may not be ready for healing. And so if you keep pressing, look, I need you to talk to me today.
Yeah, then you're going to push them. You may push them away,
then
right?
It doesn't make the situation better.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, I go back to my family reunion, and I mentioned that there are family members that are there. There are times that you got to look at yourself, and I mentioned this several times during this episode. You got to look at yourself. You got to be willing to take a step back, be the bigger person, because you mentioned that. Who wants to be the bigger person?
Yeah.
And
it's not a contest. It's not a contest.
It's not a contest. It's really approaching it to say, I want to heal this, opposed to I want to be victorious, or I want to be the person that comes out looking, clean and spotless in the situation. Really, both parties, again, it takes two to create a conflict. So both parties are already dirty. And really all you can do is dust the other person off. Yeah. Instead of trying to clean yourself, go in and clean off all the vomit and all the stuff you threw on that person, and then give them the opportunity to do the same for you.
Humble yourself a little bit. Case in point, right?
Yeah.
Mike's saying this is, and I applaud him for doing this, because it's a little vulnerable, right? He's putting himself out there for his family reunion. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's doing it with the intent of putting himself on a pedestal. I think this is an attempt to reach out, right? This is an attempt. This is how you do it. I mean, you don't have to be on podcast or YouTube doing it, but get in front of a person and be like, hey man, I realized, we had a few words, and what is it about, that situation that's giving us tension, or, because people can feel it. But as soon as you start talking about it, people tend to, first they're going to be real guarded, and then they kind of let it down a little bit. Now, keep in mind, there's thousands of other techniques you can use. Yeah. The ones that I'm personally bringing up are ones that I kind of started using after years of being in a situation at work. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of IT stuff, but when I talk to customers, I do a lot of business alignment type of discussions, and a lot of it isn't even IT based. Mm-hmm. It's literally just getting people to sit at a room at a table to talk.
Get to know that person.
To get to know that person. And what you're doing is you're building trust with that person. You're building a relationship, a rapport. But you're also airing out exactly what you're feeling, which people want honesty. Mm-hmm. And if they feel honesty, they'll give you honesty back. So, again, I know it is a little corny, right? But if you get to the point where you sit back and you listen, because the one thing we've all learned, right? Anything that you spew out of your mouth is something you've learned, right? It's something that you've digested or something you've absorbed through being, through all of your experiences in life. That's all that talking is. It's you formulating all that stuff that you've heard and you're spitting it out. If you keep your mouth shut and you listen, then you're actually learning something new. And you'll be surprised if you actually listen. You may learn something about another person or about their situation, or about whatever the conflict is between you two that you can resolve.
And that's the most important part. I think if you're going into it and you're attempting to want to understand, then that makes the situation a lot better. If you're going into it just to be right, then you're wasting your time, you're wasting that person's time. And so ultimately, for me to wrap up, I would always say, take yourself out of the equation. That's something that I try to do. And you made a comment earlier. We are not sitting here being high and mighty because
not at all.
I'm still working on myself. There are still areas that I struggle with and I want to be better at. But I think having the conversation allows me to be better. And, I want to encourage you guys to attempt to do the same because you got to start somewhere. And if you're unwilling to do that, then you're really losing out. You're really losing out on a relationship that could flourish into something else, especially if it's a family member, somebody that is blood, and you're unwilling to take the time to heal. We had that joke the other day in our other video.
Put that one out.
Yeah, to heal the relationships, it's important. It's important.
Yeah.
You guys will get that later. It's important that you take that time to at least attempt to better the situation.
And I think to me it's actually pretty simple. It's what do you want out of your life?
Yeah.
What do you want experience wise? We're not here very long. At the end of the day, our lives are short. And I really do. And again, I've said this several times. I know it sounds cliche. It really is. But, you got one life. Live it. It's short. Don't spend a lot of time wasting it on things and wasting your energy because, you could have. Gary Vaynerchuk actually said something. I was listening to one of his videos. You could have ended up a tree. Like, there was some truth to that. And when he said it, I'm like, that was kind of funny. But then I started thinking about it. What are the chances? The 1 in trillions that you were actually born, right? And it's ludicrous to think about that way, but once you start doing that, you realize how lucky you are to be here and to experience the people you have around you because you're not here very long. I think losing a lot of loved ones the last couple years for me has really hit that home, but it really is true. And you got to decide. You have to make the decision. This is what you want out of it. So I choose to try to have good relationships with people. I have kind of pushed people aside only because, those situations like when you were growing up in LA, they just, your paths you were in different swim lanes, man.
Yeah.
You were over here. You had goals you set. Your other friends or other people, your acquaintances you were with didn't have those same goals and they didn't align. So you had to at some point you have to make a choice. But I make a choice to try to, enrich my life, have people around me that are positive because everybody knows the more positivity you have around you, the more you're going to exude. And it's built confidence. It's built, hell, we're sitting here talking about it.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have done this, 7-8 years ago. It'd have been real hard just to have the ability to sit here and talk in front of people. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I hope you guys get to that point, right?
Yes.
Make that decision. Be the one to step up. You'll find. Do it small too. Find some innocuous little thing.
Just little things.
And have a talk with someone and just try it out a little bit.
Yes.
And then you'll find you'll try it a little bit and then you'll try it a little bit more and you'll try another and you get to the one relationship that you want to really, hit home and you really want back. You'll be able to, kind of walk your way through it. So
and even if they are a little resistant, if you attempt and do it in small chunks, there are those opportunities where you will start to chip away at that wall and get to that soft spot where you can begin healing. So I want to leave that and open it up to you guys. Please comment. Let us know some of the situations that you may be going through with your family. If you guys have reunions that are coming up, if you had some in the past, or just in general relationships that may not have been or are where you think they should be. Let us know some of those problems and we'll be more than happy to comment in and provide our perspective on steps that you can take to make them better.
Yeah, again, that's our perspective. We're trying to get better every day. Every single day. Yeah. We woke up this morning. It's a good day. It is sunny out. It's Florida. It might be a little chilly out, just so y'all know. We don't want to drive that home too much but it is nice down here. But anyway, yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out. I think we'll close with that.
Yeah.
This has been fun to talk about. I know it's a little uncomfortable for some people. But watch this over. Get some ideas, get some confidence, go out there and talk to people and make your situation a little bit better for yourself. So I guess with that, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, make sure you guys hit the like button. Make sure you guys subscribe. And if you want to get the notifications on when we're posting a video, which is going to be every Friday, hit that bell notification So want
here,
to thank you guys. Yeah, right over there. Want to thank you guys again. This was episode 8.
Episode 8. Thank you guys for hanging out. We appreciate it. And until next week. This is Damon.
This is Mike.
And this is a damn good show. Peace.
We did it. Oh my God.